Hello, welcome to the National Disaster Resilience Competition. I'm Harriet Tregoning, the Director of the Office of Economic Resilience, and I'm here with Jesse Hanford-Combe of the Office of Block Grant Assistance to talk to you about the competition and to familiarize you with the contents of our Notice of Funding Availability. We'll talk to you also about the schedule and the deadlines, and we'll provide you with links to additional information and more details about the competition. First and most importantly, why should you apply? All across the country, communities are facing significant risk from extreme weather, like heat waves, tropical storms, high winds, storm surges, and heavy downpours. In many places, these risks are projected to increase substantially because of sea level rise, climate change, and changing development patterns, particularly more population along the coastal areas. The numbers, they speak for themselves. The extreme weather events are increasing in both frequency and severity. Between 2011 and 2013, the President declared major disasters in more than 2,100 different counties. That's over 2/3 of all the counties. These disaster declarations include Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast, Hurricane Isaac in the South, the terrible tornadoes that destroyed large parts of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Joplin, Missouri, and Moore, Oklahoma, the devastating river flooding in Colorado, Vermont, and Minot, North Dakota, terrible fires in Texas, ice dams in Alaska, landslides in Washington State, and an earthquake in D.C. The list goes on and on. More than 200 major declared disasters in just the past 3 years. Right now, cities, towns, and states, regions all across the country are experiencing natural disasters or recovering from them. We're all realizing how vulnerable we are, not only to damage brought on by extreme events, but also to the long process of economic rebuilding that comes with recovery. And while there's clearly been both short-term and long-term federal assistance for the most significant of these events, most of the losses suffered during these disasters don't end up getting covered by private insurance or by federal aid. The hard truth is that we must now begin to rebuild with an expectation of likely extreme weather in the future. When 2/3 of the counties in the U.S. have had one or more major disaster declarations in just 3 years, we know we can't afford to simply rebuild as we did before. We hope that by the end of this competition, everyone who applies will have a blueprint that will strengthen their state or community and guide future investments in their own resilience and economic vitality. What are the goals of the competition? We have about $1 billion of community development block grant disaster recovery funds appropriated by Congress through Public Law 113.2 remaining that we want to fairly allocate. Many of the disasters that your states and communities experienced happen now more than a couple of years ago. The very best and most current information about the impacts of those disasters, especially on factors like business closure or job losses, is data that might be available at the state or local level. So we're looking to you to provide the best available information on which communities are the most impacted and distressed at this point, and what are the remaining unmet needs in those communities for the presidentially declared disasters that they suffered. We're putting out nearly $1 billion to make sure communities are well prepared to understand the risks that they're facing every day, and that they have the opportunity to plan, prepare, and implement measures that will make them more resilient to future disasters. And while $1 billion is a lot of money, every year, states and local governments spend many times that amount on investments that could be affecting your resilience. These are the decisions that state, tribal, and local leaders face daily, with every dollar that they spend on new housing, public buildings, infrastructure, and parks. We hope to encourage forward-looking, risk-based approaches to ensure that the investments we make now will last a lifetime. Will our transportation network function in case of flooding? Do we have redundant water treatment facilities in case of storm surges? Are our buildings designed to reduce energy consumption in times of peak demand, such as heat waves? Will our water supply hold up in the case of drought? Can our parks and our green spaces capture extra rainwater to reduce the burden on our storm sewers? The national competition asks communities to bring their best design thinking to the challenge of resilient disaster recovery. We don't claim to know what will work best in any one state or community, but we trust that the ideas that are born out of sound science, deep community engagement, and collaboration will be the ideas that best serve the community's current and future needs. And we expect that they not only mitigate the effects of a future tropical storm or wildfire the next time one occurs, but will also result in ideas that save taxpayer money and improve residents' quality of life over the long haul. Finally, we've learned that we need to mobilize all resources, experts, leaders, and community members in meeting these risks and challenges. No one group can solve the problem alone. In the wake of Hurricane Sandy and the Rebuild by Design competition, we learned how much can be achieved when the federal government and philanthropy align their resources. Both have strengths that can help meet this enormous challenge. We have the ability to assist states and communities across the U.S. by focusing federal resources through this competition. Philanthropy has the ability to move nimbly into new areas and to mobilize private investment and regional philanthropic partners to support priority activities. We're so pleased to be able to repeat the successful approach that was used in the Rebuild by Design competition by aligning our efforts with philanthropy here, too. We will partner with the Rockefeller Foundation, who will be making technical assistance resources available to all eligible applicants, and will work diligently side by side as we roll out the national competition.
Now I'm going to lead you through the NOFA overview and walk you through some of the details. The Notice of Fund Availability describes how the competition is going to run and how to make your submissions and all of the factors. The appendices to it you're also going to need, and there's quite a few for this competition. We have appendices that cover program requirements, post-award requirements. They tell you who's eligible, give you sample letters and terms, give you instructions for requesting waivers and parameters for the waivers that we're able to make. Your required certifications are here. Important threshold information about the most impacted and distressed and unmet recovery needs thresholds are here, along with descriptions of how to do things in phase 2 for benefit cost analysis, and a couple of formats, a consultation summary and a crosswalk checklist that you'll need to give us. And there is also HUD's general section notice, which contains administrative requirements. The NOFA for the competition itself describes the administrative requirements that apply from the general section, and you'll have to look them up in the general section. We'll be making all this available through links off the same webpage that we'll be giving you a little later in the presentation. Now, we imagine that you have a lot of questions. And so we've organized this presentation around the questions, and we've already started working through them with the why should you apply and what are the goals. And as you see, a lot of questions. So when this webinar is posted online, you can use these questions to be able to figure out what's in this webinar sort of as a table of contents too. So let's start with a really important one. Where did the funds come from? Congress appropriated supplemental CDBG funds in Public Law 113-2. And it ultimately was $15.2 billion made available. And HUD has allocated $14.2 billion approximately by formula based on damage data that we can get, national damage data from FEMA and from SBA. These are all for disasters from 2011, 2012, and 2013, and we call these grants that were made under this CDBG Disaster Recovery or CDBG-NDR. You can see the CDBG Disaster Recovery website URL on the screen, and you can get a lot of information there. And you can also sign up for the CDBG-NDR mailing list and get information. We'll be sending a lot of the competition information through both the regular CDBG and the CDBG-NDR mailing lists throughout the competition. Notifications of when webinars are coming up and things like that. The remaining funds, $999,108,000, or in round terms, $1 billion, support this national disaster resilience competition. So why are we doing a competition? Everybody knows CDBG is formula money. The data available for allocation are aging and not really credible beyond the formula awards that we've already made. They also are all at the county level. And so we can't see most impacted and distressed areas in sub-county areas. And they don't consider local pre-disaster distress or certain environmental degradation factors that were caused by the disaster. And the Public Law 113-2 requires use of the best available data. So we chose a competition to try to elicit the information that you have locally to be submitted as data, the best available data for making an allocation. Who may apply? There are 67 governmental applicants, states and local governments, who are eligible to apply for an $817 million general pool. There's a list of these organizations, these governments in the NOFA. There are 3 applicants that are applicants for a $181 million Sandy set-aside pool. And you can also see the list in the NOFA, but it's the states of New York and New Jersey and the city of New York. The factors for the competition are the same for both pools, and HUD is reserving the ability to ensure geographic diversity in making final selections in phase 2. So here are the basics for how you apply. You need to go get the NOFA plus all the appendices and the forms, like the standard form 424 from grants.gov. The CFDA number is 14.272, and you really need to read them and follow the directions. You won't be able to apply based on just the webinars. You need to connect to the CDBG and CDBG-NDR mailing lists and read all the things that you can find on the website they were standing up on the first day that the competition's available, which is September 17th, 2014. You can see on your screen what the link is. You're going to need to find partners and connect with experts. The Rockefeller Foundation effort is one way you can connect with experts. And I'm sure you have a lot of local experts that you can connect with. You need to consult with your stakeholders and citizens. We've significantly beefed up the consultation requirements, and we'll get to that. You're going to need to crunch a lot of data, and you're going to need to form conclusions. Come up with a compelling idea. We are looking for compelling disaster recovery resilience ideas. Respond to the factors inside the page limits that the NOFA will tell you about. And submit your phase 1, your complete phase 1 application by the deadline. So how do you apply? What's this with 2 phases? So we have 2 phases in the NOFA. One is a framing phase, and one is an implementation phase. In phase 1, you're going to have 180 days to frame your issues, find your partners, consult with stakeholders, generate an idea, and make a long-term commitment. We'll talk more about that soon. HUD will evaluate the applications that it receives, and we'll invite the high phase 1 scorers to submit a phase 2 project implementation proposal drawn from your phase 1 framing and your idea. There will be a reserve pool, which is about $30 million in CDBG-NDR being held aside, that will address well-documented unmet recovery needs in non-selected applicant communities. And this is non-selected from either phase 1 or phase 2. There will be a separate notice if HUD decides to implement this reserve pool after reviewing applications and decides that the need data is best available data and HUD wants to make an allocation for some non-selectees. So you definitely need to read the notice for that. With whom may you apply? Well, the only applicants allowed, because of the eligible applicants in the law, are one of the 67 governments that are listed in the NOFA. But you, the applicant, may choose partners to add capacity to your team, depth to your application, and to help you implement or fund your proposal. These partners are not in consortium with you. This is not a consortium. After the award, a partner will help you implement your phase 2 proposal, and they'll become, in CDBG terms, a subrecipient or a developer or a contractor or a co-funder, a consultant, or they may just be funding something alongside you under a memorandum of understanding. So what are the thresholds? You can see the whole list on your screen. We'll be going through those in more detail in other future webinars. But you can see that there's a lot of thresholds that you need to get through. Some of them, such as the most impacted and distressed and unmet recovery needs thresholds, are both hard thresholds and also partly scored as you move through the application. Some of them simply are you an eligible applicant or not? Now, if you are looking at these thresholds and you are a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant specialist, you are going to be looking at some things that you do not recognize and don't really understand, like what is going on with this benefit cost analysis thing. And if you are an emergency manager and you're looking at this, you're looking at things like what's a national objective? Well, we work together with FEMA and a lot of other agencies, federal agencies, putting together this competition. And Harriet's office will be working to help coordinate them going forward. They are going to be, this is a cross-federal effort. You're going to have to work together. This is part of finding partners, is you're going to have to find governmental partners who have the knowledge of both resilience, disaster management, threats and hazards, current and future, and community development, and what does it mean to help meet a national objective and have an eligible activity. Okay, so you need to make sure that when you look at these thresholds, they're telling you something about this competition and how the kind of expertise you're going to have to bring. The threshold you need to meet the fastest or need to think about first coming in is whether you have a most impacted and distressed area within your declared counties that has unmet recovery needs. And we have an appendix that'll help you work through that, and there's also a webinar that's going to be posted that you can take a look at on the website link that I gave you, so you can see a walkthrough here. During the first 45 days after the NOFA is published, up till November 3rd, HUD will be providing to any grantee who writes in with their threshold response on this threshold, will be providing a yes, that works, or yes, it meets threshold, or no, it doesn't, and this is what doesn't meet threshold. We can't tell you how to fix it, but you can get a first early review on this threshold, and again, watch the webinar for this threshold. There are a lot of new terms here. We had to make some new terms to be able to work through some of the alternative requirements and the waivers that we made under this National Disaster Recovery Competition. In general, terms are defined the same as in the annual CDBG program, more particularly in the entitlement program. Some of the new terms that we have are most impacted and distressed. You can see Appendix G on the webinar I referenced. Unmet recovery needs, tieback, which is tieback of your activity, your proposal, to the effects of the qualified disaster. We defined resilience in a way that will work well with your hazard mitigation plan or your state's hazard mitigation plan. And you need to take a look at that. Instead of using activity, which is a term CDBG uses all the time, we are also bringing in the word project because it helps us to intersect better with environmental review requirements, which are delegated in the CDBG program and delegated for this competition to the applicants. So environmental review is the responsibility of applicants. We chose using the term project because that's a term the environmental review regulations use, and we are trying to do a lot of things throughout this competition to help with swift launch if you are accepted for phase 2, because there are statutory deadlines on expenditure that come with this money. Covered project is a new term. If you have a project that's big enough, it'll be a covered project, and you'll have to do a benefit cost analysis in phase 2. And then we use the term vulnerable populations. This covers not only low and moderate income people, but it covers people with disabilities, the elderly, and other populations who may have special problems accessing information or resources. before and after disaster, and whose resilience, all the research tells us, is much more difficult to secure. So here's a table showing the competition factors and the points for phase one. And one of the things that you need to notice is that the minimums that are in the right-hand column don't add up to the total at the bottom. Those are factors that have factor minimums, but not every factor does. So there are some factors with factor minimums, and then there's a minimum for the entire application. And that happens also in phase two. And you can see that in phase two, soundness of approach is going to be the dominant factor. Layered throughout all of these factors in both phases, we are looking for an application that goes bigger than we can reach with just CDBG-NDR funds. CDBG-NDR funds must be used to pay for necessary expenses related to your disaster recovery or economic revitalization of the area that experienced the disaster. And we can build back better and fund some resilience incorporated into your project. And we'll be doing factor webinars for phase one and phase two and walk you through the factors in detail. But what we really want you to start thinking about now is that what we're looking for is for you to take additional actions so that you go beyond just what we can pay for and look to those things, the commitments you can make, and reach to wider areas than just the declared counties, and be able to secure resilience for a wider geography, and in ways, looking at ways that you can reach maybe as wide as statewide or region-wide, and find other funders and make changes to make plans conform with each other, or to find financing mechanisms, or to raise your standards in a way that makes an even greater area more resilient. The best applications are going to go bigger even than we can fund. So leverage is going to be very important. We're going to ask you all throughout your entire factors, all throughout your competition materials, for you to use an evidence-based practice. We want you to demonstrate that you set your goals, designed your programs based on quality data. We're going to keep saying to you, what is your basis for that conclusion? And you need to keep telling us. And we'll be talking to you a little bit more about what quality data is. But again, the most impacted and distressed and unmet recovery needs guidance will really help you get a start on what good data sources look like. We also looked at how you could be more efficient. And we want you to see that what we've learned through experience is that you can get faster launches through coordination with your environmental and historic preservation staff. The competition design itself merges some environmental review, consultation, and analysis elements into the program-related factors so that you can get a really good jump start on your environmental justice and consultation requirements for floodplains, for example, by making sure that every public meeting you have takes advantage of, you can set the agenda and you can include some of these environmental consultation requirements along with the competition consultation requirements. And we strongly recommend that you include staff with environmental review expertise from the outset, as soon as you start, and look for opportunities to, make it so that when you get to the end, if you get funded for phase two, you are going to be able to have a quick launch and be able to expend all the funds that you're awarded in a timely manner before the statutory deadlines. What will help you get to phase two? Because that's the money round, the implementation round. Well, look at phase one, factor 5. That's the only factor we're calling out individually in this particular presentation. We'll go through the phase one factors in another webinar. But it asks you to describe the commitment that you're going to make, a long-term commitment to increase the resilience in your jurisdiction, regardless of whether you win a CDBG-NDR, National Disaster Resilience Award. You will not be invited to phase 2 unless you make a long-term commitment, or you have made one since the date of the qualified disaster. The list of all those possible commitments is in phase 2, factor 5. So you can take a look and see what we're asking for and what we're looking for here. Why is leverage so important? That's a question that we got asked a lot actually while we were building this competition, just with the people that were working on it. And it is because the CDBG-NDR funds are going to be for necessary expenses to address unmet recovery needs in a most impacted and distressed area, but risks and extreme events, threats and hazards, they don't have boundaries. Climate change does not have a boundary. Resilience should not have boundaries. So we want you to go for the biggest geography that you can, and the best applications are going to have to get leverage, financial and other kinds of support, to expand the reach of the NDRC and of your resilience actions into a broader geography and beyond activities that can tie back to the qualified disaster. Why are we having an emphasis on vulnerable populations? Well, this question would definitely not come from a regular CDBG practitioner, but it's an important one to address. The regular CDBG program, the low and moderate income national objective, is the dominant objective. At least 70% of funds must be used to benefit low and moderate income people. But in disaster recovery, there's an additional reason beyond just the purpose of a statutory purpose of a program why we emphasize vulnerable populations. Because research shows that the populations that don't have access to the information and resources needed to participate in recovery don't recover. And that's not good. You can't be resilient if you have a large population that was affected by the disaster and doesn't recover, or is affected really deeply by the disaster and causes your community to not be able to recover as a whole. CDBG-NDR's unique role in post-disaster relates to its program focus on low and moderate income persons and the businesses, housing, and infrastructure that's serving those populations. There are environmental justice responsibilities related to vulnerable populations. There are civil rights requirements related to vulnerable populations. And the involvement of those stakeholders is really needed in your consultation to help you frame the best paths forward. If you don't talk to stakeholders that are members of vulnerable populations or advocates for them, you are not going to have a full picture of the needs in your community. And you might not have a full picture of the creativity and the ideas that they could generate for you. So what are the phase 1 deadlines? You may submit your most impacted and distressed and unmet recovery needs threshold responses within 45 days of the NOFA publication for early review by HUD. We will be trying to answer all those requests by the 60th day after NOFA publication. So that will give you an early read. The NOFA and the topic webinar have a great deal more information on meeting these thresholds. The full phase 1 application is due 180 days after publication of the NOFA. So what happens in phase 2? Well, if you're invited to phase 2, if you're a high-scoring phase 1 applicant, you will submit a proposal for a project to implement based on your phase 1 framing and idea. So phase 1 is about framing your needs, describing your vulnerabilities, understanding your threats and hazards, and doing a lot of consultation and coming up with a really good idea or a concept. And then in phase 2, you're going to go on and lift out of that a project that you believe is feasible in the time given, and in that the applicant can carry out, implement with your partners, and that it also means feasibility that the project is designed properly to achieve the proposed benefits, and one of the benefits must be resilience. The best applicants are going to extend resilience, again, behind the actions and areas eligible for CDBG-NDR assistance by leveraging plans and strategic long-term commitments. The phase 2 deadlines, if you're invited by HUD, you will submit your phase 2 application 120 days after the date of your invitation letters. We anticipate sending those invitation letters about 60 days after we receive Phase 1 applications. HUD and other agencies and experts will rate and rank all of the applications and make the selections for award. So there are also Phase 2 deadlines related to the funding. HUD must obligate the funds from PL 113-2, which means sign a grant agreement by September 30th, 2017, or the funds will lapse and be gone and not available. A grantee will have 24 months to expend the funds after obligation. We do have some waiver authority for that, but it's not infinite. If you submit a schedule with your Phase 2 application that shows that you're going to need more time to complete your proposal, which we anticipate from a large number of these applications, and that's going to exceed 24 months, your application must also include a waiver request for a time extension. Okay, so you need to make sure you get that in, and Appendix A has more detail on the expenditure requirement, and Appendix E includes instructions in requesting an expenditure waiver. So you definitely need to read those appendices. What triggers a BCA? Well, a BCA is a benefit cost analysis, and any Phase 2 application with a covered project is going to have to submit one. A covered project is a project that is $50 million with at least $10 million of proposed CDBG-NDR in it, or a project that will cover more than one county. Appendix H has instructions for the BCA, and even if you're not going to propose something that large, I strongly recommend to you that you look at Appendix H, because all Phase 2 applications are going to have to submit outcome metrics and in their factor responses that are based on metrics described in Appendix H. HUD will not consider benefit cost analysis for points. We have not done them before for CDBG, and these benefit cost analyses are not identical with the ones that you do for the Department of Transportation or for FEMA or for any other agency. So you need to take a look at them. There are some similar things, and there are some additional things that were added because the range of activities that are eligible under CDBG is quite broad. And you are also going to be able to make some qualitative responses. But we are urging you to strongly to try to quantify and monetize all of the costs and the benefits associated with your proposal. HUD is not going to fund any Phase 2 activities for which the benefits to the applicant's community and to the United States as a whole are not demonstrated by the evidence submitted to justify the costs. So that's a quote from the NOFA, and we're going to stand by that. We really, really need you to make the case for why your project's benefits would justify the costs of carrying out your activities. And here's the definition of a covered project. Again, quoted from the NOFA so you can see it as part of this presentation. So this brings us to the question of whether this is really CDBG funds or not. And this is especially aimed at the CDBG practitioners who may be watching this. CDBG-DR and NDR do build off the basic CDBG chassis. So the supplemental appropriations language establishes the basis for the use of CDBG-DR by establishing the funding level, identifying the events that are eligible for assistance, in this case, disasters occurring in 2011, 2012, and 2013, presidentially declared major disasters occurring in that time frame. It provides us with waiver and alternative requirement authority, and it defines some other requirements, which you'll find out about by reading the NOFA. We're not covering all of the other requirements there. Some of them relate to some financial proficiency requirements, for example. Why do we use the CDBG chassis for long-term disaster recovery? Existing local capacity is available because CDBG policies and procedures are established, and there are 1,200 CDBG grantees around the country and all of the states. There's a broad range of eligible activities that align with resilience. Public facilities and infrastructure, housing rehab, assistance to businesses, and acquisition and demolition, just to name a few. Activities must meet a CDBG national objective, and not everywhere, but in many quarters, this is seen as an advantage of the program. The emphasis on low and moderate income benefit, addressing slums and blight, which is the bane of communities that can't recover after disaster, are often left with slum and blighted conditions that they can't deal with. And urgent need, which is addressing an urgent community development need for which you have no other funding. And all of these are described in more detail in the NOFA and in the Community Development Block Grant regulations. So how did we change CDBG to get to CDBG-NDR, besides putting a competition on the front end? We develop a Federal Register notice or notices to implement CDBG-DR, and so we have a NOFA for this and Appendix A. And there's a lot of waivers that you can see in Appendix A and alternative requirements. We work from the basic CDBG statute, which is the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended, and the regulations, and we apply waiver and alternative requirement authority to it. We're able to bend CDBG for disaster recovery in many ways, but we do have some limitations imposed by the supplemental appropriation, which tells us the purpose of the funding. We have cross-cutting statutes, like environmental and fair housing statutes. And we also have some administration policy requirements that we impose through alternative requirements. So what are the things that have to stay the same? You can see our authority. One is that we can't change things that we don't administer. We can only change the things we do administer. The limitations are we can't change fair housing, non-discrimination, labor standards, also known as Davis-Bacon, and environmental review requirements, which is NEPA and related acts. Further, HUD generally does not waive OMB and Treasury requirements applied to CDBG that would, those changes would interfere with the statutory directives to limit fraud, waste, and mismanagement. So pieces of the CDBG chassis, like financial management, remain largely the same. There are some additional eligibility limits to the Housing and Community Development Act activities for CDBG-NDR. I'm going to call out one, which is that CDBG-NDR funds can only be used to assist small businesses per the SBA definition. This could limit if, for example, you were thinking of trying to harden your energy grid because your energy grid was affected by your disaster, if a large for-profit utility owns it. So, because we can only assist small businesses. So you need to take a look and think about that as you're doing your framing and looking at your unmet needs and looking for leverage. There are some other eligibility limits. There's a list of ineligible activities for CDBG-NDR funding. And again, this is something where CDBG practitioners and emergency management practitioners are going to need to put their heads together, because some of these are coming in and using terminology such as temporary measures, that is a term that's used in a lot of FEMA programs, for example. You need to take a look at this list of ineligible activities. Obviously, anything that can't establish a threshold is not eligible for funding. But there's a list here that you should take a look at that if you want to propose doing one of these activities, you need to indicate a leverage source to pay for it, because that wouldn't be eligible for CDBG-NDR funds. And what are the details? There's tons and tons of details we're not going into. This slide shows you a few of them. And for example, PL 113-2 does not mention mitigation as an eligible use of funds. And it doesn't remove the $250,000 limit on using CDBG funds in an Army Corps of Engineers as a cost match or cost share for an Army Corps of Engineers project. There are a lot of other details, and you really, I recommend that you read the NOFA and mark it up and look at the appendices and really understand this to form a foundation for you moving forward and preparing your applications. And here's the slide you've all been waiting for. What can you win? For the National Disaster Recovery Competition, The minimum grant award in Phase 2 will be $1 million. The maximum possible grant amount is $500 million. It would be an amazing, compelling application that won that much, but we're not putting limits. We want you to think as big as you need to meet your needs. There will also be a small reserve pool of $30 million for non-selected Phase 1 and Phase 2 applicants who have demonstrated unmet recovery needs and met the other requirements for the reserve pool, which you can read in the NOFA. HUD will use a separate Federal Register allocation notice for these, and the maximum allocation there is $500,000 if you have an existing PL 113-2 grant, or $2.5 million if you do not have an existing PL 113-2 grant. You can see the NOFA for details. I couldn't resist putting that line on there with a slide that said, what can you win? And now I'm sure you're saying, how can you get technical assistance? For technical assistance, obviously, because HUD is covered by the HUD Reform Act, we cannot tell you or give you advice on how to prepare your application, other than what's already in the NOFA. But for advice related to the NOFA and more information related to the NOFA, we are going to have a webinar series. This is the first one of them. And we are also going to be posting NOFA FAQs. And you can send us questions at resilientrecovery@hud.gov. I'm going to be one of the people answering that email address. And we will be trying to turn answers around as fast as we can. And we will be also posting, considering your questions for NOFA FAQs that we'll post on the web, so everybody will have access to them. We won't give any one applicant an advantage over any other applicant. That's a requirement of the HUD Reform Act. If you want information related to resilience and climate change as general topics, the Rockefeller Foundation effort can really help you with that. And we suggest as soon as we start posting information about that, that you connect to that. And also the HUD Exchange website, you can see the link on the screen, will provide a lot of information and links not only to the NOFA, but also to this general resilience topic. Other federal agencies, as I mentioned, are aware of this competition, and they're also working independently on resilience, and resilience to climate change in particular, but resilience in general. And we will be linking to their information, and you can also reach out to the extent that you are you have contacts with those agencies and get information and talk to them. And that takes us out of the, our presentation for today. I hope this was useful to you, and we'll be coming and talk to you more. Good luck.